Shifting towards the Iranian nuclear issue, there's been several rounds of international negotiations that haven't really produced any substantial results. So what do you believe is needed now at this particular juncture to convince Iran that it has to make certain concessions on its nuclear program?
Well, the Iranian position on this matter is extremely complicated. From my perspective, as I see it, I do not believe that Iran is prepared to make the kind of concessions needed or required that the international community is demanding, specifically the powers that are negotiating with Iran on this matter. I'm convinced that Iran will never give up what it calls its right to have a nuclear program on its own soil. That is almost a given as far as Iran is concerned. Then they have the question is whether Iran in fact pursuing a nuclear weapon or not. Here again, by all estimates, specifically intelligence sources from Israel and the United States and other sources, absolutely confirm that Iran has this intention and is pursuing it and will continue to pursue it. As a result of this, Iran has chosen a strategy, an approach that will facilitate that. A couple of them. One is playing for time. They have been playing for time, they will continue to play for time, and they have made significant progress because of that. Two, they have sent mixed messages. You hear various Iranian officials, one would say Iran is prepared to make concessions and work towards some kind of an agreement. And then you have, for example, the Ayatollah Khomeini would say we are not interested because all the West would like to do is impose more and more sanctions on us. So you have these mixed messages that is coming from Iran, and that is also does not allow us for developing any effective strategy to deal with Iran. Then you have the conflicting interest of the parties that are negotiating with Iran. For example, China, Russia, certainly differ in their approach than the United States, Britain and France, and Germany for that matter. And the Iranians have been playing one against the other. And as a result, all of these meetings have been taking place actually produce very little. Even though China and Russia very much object to Iran acquiring a nuclear weapon, but they also have different kind of interest in Iran. And so they do not want to put the kind of pressure, specifically adding even more crippling sanctions, because they want to maintain their bilateral relations with Iran. So the Iranians are very clever. They know where the weaknesses are. They're trying to exploit that weakness. They make promises to play for time, but never fulfill these promises. And as I see things now, time is of the essence. The situation continues the way it is now. And President Obama actually meant what he said a number of times, that the policy is to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon rather than contain it. And if the Israelis actually mean what they say in terms of not allowing Iran under any circumstances to acquire nuclear weapons, so if you take these positions seriously, which we should, I don't think the president can afford to bluff, and I don't think the Israelis are bluffing either. And if there is no progress, then we are going to see a very dire development in months to come. Can that be avoided? I think it can. And that's going to take a number of prerequisites. I think the Iranians ought to believe that the American threat is real. They ought to see it. They ought to see more military preparation, for example. We should make them choose between regime change or acquiring a nuclear weapon. From their perspective, they want to keep this regime, and for them it's far more important even from acquiring a nuclear weapon. But they have to know that it is entirely possible that if the issue is not resolved, that regime itself will be in danger. So they have to also know that there is more crippling sanction that can be imposed on them and should be done in a very focused and concerted manner. So yes, there is a window of opportunity. The question here is whether the United States or the other powers are prepared to muster all these together and force the issue on Iran. But even if that were to happen, as I said, whether Iran will eventually abandon its nuclear program, that is really questionable, and that's something that Israel will not accept, almost under any circumstances.